After nearly 500 days of war and almost 50,000 killed, a fragile truce offers Palestinians an opportunity to return home, to bury loved ones, to breathe. But for how long? I'm Anelise Borges, and this is the stream on the month-long ceasefire after 15 months of genocide in Gaza. It's been 1 month since a ceasefire deal negotiated between Israel and Hamas came into effect, and uncertainty looms over whether it can actually hold. There are just 2 weeks left until the end of the first phase of the agreement, but several terms in it have yet to be implemented, including the delivery of aid. And while the entire world watches, tens of thousands of Palestinians have been trying to pick up the pieces of what is left of their lives and wondering when and how to rebuild. Here's Farida Al-Ghul with a video diary on what the ceasefire has felt like to Gazans so far.
I am recording this while walking to return to the north. I'm so happy, and I have a special feeling this morning. Look at the people behind me, all Gazans now just walking. This is my destroyed home now from the north of Gaza City. I just see some stones. I forget everything. I forget my memories. I forget what I was doing before this war. Look at this. Everything here is destroyed, but we will rebuild it again. How I cook in the north.
We use this old equipment because we don't have other choices. It's very hard to use it.
People think a ceasefire means life goes back to normal, but what does normal look like? As you see, this is our normal life.
To discuss where things stand and what it will take for this truce to become a permanent reality, I'm joined today by Arwa Damon, former war correspondent and founder of INARA, an international network for aid, relief and assistance. British-Palestinian surgeon Dr. Ghassan Abu Sittah. He has worked in several hospitals across Gaza as a volunteer, and Muhannad Ayyash, professor of sociology at Mount Royal University. Thank you all so much for joining us here at the stream today. Arwa, as the strip lies in ruins there, many have already started talking about reconstructing, and this could be the largest reconstruction effort in modern history. The UN says it would take 15 years to clear the rubble. Can we even talk about rebuilding when the future looks so uncertain?
Well, it certainly makes it a lot more difficult to talk about rebuilding when at this stage humanitarian organizations are struggling to just bring in sufficient shelter items like tents or those prefab units that were supposed to be coming in under the agreement. A lot of families right now, and when you listen to them and what the greatest needs are talking about the need for shelter and access to, basic necessities. And that is one of the first things that needs to be provided before one can actually talk about reconstruction. In addition to all of that, there is the reality that just about everything you would need for reconstruction does not really exist in Gaza at the moment. You need the heavy machinery, you need to be able to, tragically go through the rubble and find the thousands of bodies that are estimated to still be buried there. You need to be able to have the trucks and the various other sorts of construction materials inside. And right now, it's a huge struggle to even have a conversation about letting that in, never mind trying to circumvent all of Israel's rules and regulations when it comes to what isn't allowed into Gaza.
Dr. Abu Sittah, do you agree that it's very difficult to actually talk about rebuilding Gaza at this stage?
We've always known that the Israelis try to achieve in the ceasefire what they can't achieve in the war. And Israel has created, as part of the genocidal project, mechanisms for killing that are beyond the bombs and the missiles. And these mechanisms are related to the destruction of the lived environment in Gaza, the destruction of the health system. And so what Israel is trying to achieve is a continuation of the genocide through infectious diseases, through the denial of healthcare, through the allowing the wounded to die of their wounds, even if these wounds are not life-threatening initially, in order to continue this project. And I think what we've heard from President Trump in the last week is an indication that this genocidal project, there is a plan for it to continue well into a ceasefire through the denial of the basic needs of life into Gaza, and so that the Palestinians continue to die in these numbers.
So the destruction continues even as the guns fall silent. Muhannad, we're talking about a deal that's barely holding, to be fair. I mean, there's been reports of at least 265 violations. 120 Palestinians have reportedly been killed since the ceasefire came into effect, and that in Gaza alone, obviously. Can we even call this a truce?
No, and a serious violation. Just today, 3 policemen were killed. Still no caravans, still no mobile homes, still nowhere near enough humanitarian aid being delivered to Gaza. If they're not even living up to phase 1, what makes people think that they're going to even get on with the phase 2? They still have not gone on with the phase 2 negotiations. It's set to start in 2 weeks. It's already delayed. They have no intention of getting into phase 2. There's reports that Netanyahu wants to extend phase 1 and continue to violate phase 1 to basically release captives and continue with their genocidal plan. If they're not letting in mobile homes, it means that they do want to pursue this quote-unquote Trump Netanyahu plan for displacing the Palestinians and continuing the genocide. So this is where we are at. Despite all the difficulties that we face right now in terms of making sure that reconstruction takes place, in my view, that is the critical thing to do for the international community, is to insist on full reconstruction as soon as possible. They want to make Gaza continuously uninhabitable and force people to leave. So the international community, if it is serious about opposing the expulsion of Palestinians from their homes and lands, if it is serious about stopping this genocide once and for all, then it needs to insist on the full reconstruction of Gaza to begin immediately.
The question about whether the international community is serious could have been asked 15 months ago, right? But Arwa, in January, just before the ceasefire, the UN had already stated that efforts to supply aid in Gaza were, quote, at breaking point. You mentioned there before the 1.9 million people are internally displaced. 80% of them are living in makeshift shelters. And you said about the difficulties of getting just shelters inside Gaza at the moment. What are you hearing from your teams on the ground in terms of the most important needs that are not being met?
Well, here's the sort of Machiavellian challenges that we face as humanitarian organizations when it comes to actually getting aid in. We don't have that much say over which trucks and which items really get priority. So what we have been seeing throughout the ceasefire up until now is that, yes, thankfully, quite a few food items have been getting in, and the markets right now, if your child right now wants a bar of chocolate, you can find that on the market. That's not meeting the current needs of the population. The most pressing needs right now are shelter items. So that's tents, that's tarps, that's these, pre-constructed units that were meant to be a part of the deal. And then also access to clean water. You have, a huge population shift that took place once again, once the Netzarim corridor was opened, with hundreds of thousands of people moving from, central Gaza up to Gaza City, to the northernmost parts, people also wanting to move back further south into Rafah. But there is no pre-existing infrastructure left there anymore that can actually deliver clean water and sanitation. And so as organizations, you try to establish that in these areas, but it's extraordinarily difficult when what's coming in is not sufficient. The other huge pressing item, for example, is fuel. Fuel is still in very, very short supply. There's also a great need for hygiene kits, for medicine, for machinery, for all of the, semi-functional medical facilities, not to mention the need to try to open field clinics in a lot of these areas that have been entirely decimated. So right now, outside of, food, everything else is a huge priority.
And on the medical situation, Dr. Abu Sittah, more than 100,000 people have been injured in Gaza as a result of the war. That's 1 in 20 people in the Strip. The World Health Organization has said that 22,000 of them have life-altering injuries that require rehabilitation. You posted about this on social media, and you actually wrote, "For the wounded, a war is never a thing of the past." Can you tell us about that, but also remind us of just the conditions of the medical infrastructure today and how long it would take to rebuild it to a level that is actually suitable to the needs of the people?
So just to kind of look at the pediatric population of the wounded, we know from the medical literature that each war wounded child needs between 8 and 12 surgeries by the time they reach adult age. We know that a child with a lower limb prosthetic needs a new prosthesis every 6 months. The sheer magnitude of what is facing the Palestinian health system in order to treat these, to minimize the residual disability that will be left by these injuries, to ensure that as these children grow, they're being treated because the body will try to outgrow or grow much faster than the wounded parts of that body. And so the Israelis have only allowed a single field hospital in. They have not allowed any of the building equipment needed to rebuild the 33 out of the 36 hospitals that they have destroyed. And so neither are the wounded coming out in the numbers that is necessary. There's only around 50 kids that are coming out every day. So there's around 470 that's come out since the ceasefire happened. But also, the sheer number means that none of them, not a single party, either in the region or within the Palestinian health system, can deal with all of the wounded. And so we need to very quickly increase the capacity of the system in Gaza.
And these needs, Doctor, they might actually increase, right? These needs might actually increase, as Arwa was just saying, because there's so many issues with, for example, water distribution and sanitation. Things can get significantly worse if these are not addressed first and fast.
Absolutely. I mean, the epidemics of infectious disease are as a result of a combination of the destruction of the lived environment, people's homes, the destruction of the water and sewage treatment, and the denial of access to clean drinking water. And so unless that is dealt with, the kind of machinery that produces illness and death continues to take its toll on the Palestinians. If you are wounded and you end up with an infectious disease, the chances of you dying is higher with a milder infectious disease and a smaller wound because the body is physiologically depleted. And the same in terms of the hypothermia that we're watching now. This triad of death, this malnutrition, wounding, and hypothermia is taking the lives of the vulnerable, so the children and the elderly. At a rate, and it's a kind of silent genocide. This is the silent part of the genocide. And
again, it is just such a dramatic picture. And Muhannad, you mentioned this before, the international community. The US President, Donald Trump, had an offer to make. Let's take a look.
The US will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East.
Muhannad, this proposal to take over the Strip has generated headlines, but not meaningful solutions for the problems facing the people in Gaza. Quite the opposite. What kind of message do you think this sends?
Oh, well, Trump's message is for Israel to go ahead with its genocidal plans. What they really want to do is to, like I said, make life uninhabitable, make the Gaza Strip uninhabitable and life impossible. And, you know, Trump's comments are your 21st century of classic, you know, European imperialism and colonialism and settler colonialism. We're just going to take it. It's ours. Are you going to, when he was asked, are you going to buy it? He said, no, why would we buy it? There's nobody to buy it from. We're just going to take it. We have the force. We have the violence. We have the economic and political capital. We can do anything we want. And though these comments were condemned, like I said, serious policy actions need to be taken by the international community.
As soul-crushing as that message was, this is the reaction on the ground to Trump's words. Take a look.
We will not accept any plan for resettlement or an alternative homeland, because this is our land and we will resist till the last blood of our bodies.
لو طلبت منك تخرج من بيتك ومن أرضك وتعيش بمصر أو الصين، هل توافق؟
كيف إحنا عشنا الحرب سنة و4 شهور وفي الآخر يجي هو يعطي تصريحات وإن إحنا نطلع منها؟
رغم هيك الناس متمسكة ببلدها، بترابها، بوطنها. لا يمكن هذا الأمر يحدث مهما قال ترامب وغير ترامب.
Dr. Abu Sittah, we've talked about this before, but I wanted your take on these words, these reactions, but also these scenes of people clearing up and trying to rebuild the little that is left of their lives. What does that tell you about the resilience of people across Gaza?
What white European settlers, be them Israeli white European settlers or American white European settlers, can never understand is the organic relationship between the indigenous population and their land. This has always been the case. The Palestinians have stood in their land. They have been steadfast in their resistance to a project that has been ongoing for 75 years to erase them from their land. And that project has failed in Palestine between the river and the sea. 50% of the population is Palestinian Arab. And that's despite the many massacres and the genocide and the expulsion. Someone like Trump is incapable of understanding the relationship that the Palestinians have with their land. Palestinians have rebuilt their land before, after many onslaughts, and they will continue to rebuild their land. What we've seen when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians return to the north, and what we will see when Rafah border is eventually opened, is with the return of Palestinians who are currently stuck outside Gaza in Egypt, is the fact that the Palestinians will return to their country. They are committed to remaining in Palestine and rebuilding Palestine. The most important thing with regards to what Trump has said, this should be a warning to the rest of the world. Just the way that Biden normalized the genocide as a tool of managing surplus population, Trump is trying to normalize ethnic cleansing in a way that is quintessentially European colonial. You know, the words that came out of Trump's mouth could have easily come out of King Leopold of Belgium's mouth, or Benjamin Disraeli's mouth, or any other colonial European leaders.
And again, and it begs the question, right? Where to next? Where to from here? How much more difficult can things become for Palestinians? And of course, we're talking about Gaza, but there's also attacks that have intensified across the West Bank. I wanted to get a sense from each one of you, a final thought here in terms of where we're heading and what do you guys hope it will happen. We have a very short time, so I just wanted a sentence or two from each one of you. Arwa, you go first. What do you think is going to happen next? Where do you see this deal going, and what do you hope will happen to Gaza?
I want to be wrong, but unless we really see Arab states come together and solidify a position that basically calls this Trump idea, this, desire to empty out Gaza, something that is entirely unacceptable, it's very hard to see how the US and the Israelis don't actually fulfill this utterly absurd plan that they have. The other thing that's also important to keep in mind, though, is that for so many in Gaza right now, all of this that we're talking about, it's their life. And for them, hearing all of the rhetoric is just a certain level of unbearable psychological torture on top of everything else that they are having to face.
Absolutely. Muhannad, your take.
I have no doubt in the Palestinian people's steadfastness and perseverance and insistence to stay on their land and resist the Israeli settler colonial and plans and American imperial plans in Palestine and beyond. What I would like to see, and I would like the world to prove, is that it can match the Palestinian people's commitment to decolonization and human rights. The Arab states absolutely have to step forward and take the lead on this. And others can and should as well. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it. There is only one way to end the structure of Israeli genocide once and for all, and that is to economically and politically and legally isolate the Israeli state. They will only answer to economic, political, and legal pressure, and economic being the key one. Communities and states around the world have to get together and place that kind of pressure on Israel. Otherwise, it's going to be a victory for U.S. imperialism, Israeli settler colonialism, and it will be replicated beyond Palestine. Everybody has something to fight for here, not just the Palestinians.
Dr. Abu Sittah, final word from you. Where to from here?
The Palestinian people will continue to resist. They will continue to be steadfast in their land. White settler colonial Zionism will continue its attempts to erase the Palestinians. And it's up, as Marwa said, to the Arab states and the Arab people to, for once, realize that if this is allowed to pass, if this genocidal erasure or the ethnic cleansing is allowed to pass, it's them that will pay the heaviest political price. In 1948, the expulsion of Palestinians led to decades of coups, of revolutions, of overthrown monarchies and states, and disrupted the region as a result of the cataclysmic effects of the expulsion of Palestinians. This genocide is much bigger than the 1948 Nakba. This genocide was televised, and the destabilizing effect of this genocide will be played out in the region for decades to come. And unless the Arabs and the Arab peoples stand up to this ethnic cleansing, then they will also pay the price.
Dr. Abu Sittah, Arwa, and Muhannad, thank you so much for joining us here on the stream today. And thank you all for tuning in. Do keep the conversation going online. Use the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we will look into your questions and feedback. Take care, and I'll see you soon.